Okay, so you're here listening to the deep dive because you want to get up to speed quickly, right? On everything that's happening in strength and conditioning. I mean, there's so much out there, it's hard to keep up. You scroll and scroll and scroll, and it's all jargon.
It really is. It's like everyone's speaking a different language.
Yeah.
But that's where we come in. We've gone through all the research, all the latest trends, and we're going to break it down for you.
We've done all the legwork. So think of this as your cheat code, like fast-tracking your understanding of how training is evolving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's exciting is that it's all about cutting-edge stuff, things that are actually working, and importantly, how all these different pieces of the puzzle fit together.
Yeah, and the sources we've got are amazing. We've got detailed briefings, some really helpful FAQs. We've even tapped into some insights from leading experts. And what's really cool is there's this central theme.
Yeah, this idea that it's all about combining hardcore science with like the latest and greatest technology. And the focus is on the individual.
Tailoring training to the individual with the goal of boosting performance, right? And being smart about managing fatigue.
Absolutely. And setting you up for success in the long run. It's not just about the here and now.
It's about longevity. Okay, so let's get into it. And a great place to start is technology, because it's everywhere, isn't it?
It really is. It's completely changing the game. And it's giving us this incredible data and these insights that we just didn't have before.
Yeah, it feels like we're moving away from guesswork and toward this objective, data-driven approach. And one of the clearest examples of this is velocity-based training, VBT.
Yeah, VBT.
For those who are just getting their heads around it, what's the basic idea?
So basically, it's all about measuring the speed at which you lift weights. So during your resistance training, how fast is that bar moving? And it sounds simple, but tracking that speed tells you so much about how much effort you're putting in.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's like getting real-time feedback from your body. Instead of just sticking to a weight because it's in your plan, you adjust based on how fast you're moving that bar. It's called autoregulation.
So if the bar's flying up, you know you've got more to give.
Yeah, you can push a bit harder. And if it's slow, you dial it back.
It's like your body is talking to you. So what kind of tech is making this happen?
There's some cool stuff out there. Accelerometers, those are like tiny sensors that pick up on movement.
Almost like a speedometer for your barbell.
Exactly. And then there are linear position transducers, which track exactly how the bar travels as you lift.
And these are like those push bands or GymAware, that kind of thing?
That's right. And it has a huge impact. I mean, it helps you develop explosive power. It prevents you from overtraining. This idea of training at the right intensity based on how you're feeling that day is a big part of managing fatigue, which, as you know, is super important.
It's such a smart way to train. And it's not just about what's happening in the gym, right? It's about this bigger picture of your overall state. And wearable technology is really helping with that.
Oh, absolutely. Think about all those wearables that are out there. Oura Ring, Whoop, Apple Watch, even Garmin. They're collecting so much data. Your heart rate variability.
Which tells you how well you're recovering.
Exactly. Your sleep quality, how well you're sleeping, how deep your sleep is. You get these overall recovery scores. It's like having this 24/7 window into your body.
It's amazing. And AI is playing a role now too, right? Artificial intelligence.
It is. You've got all this data from your wearables. You combine it with how you're performing in your workouts, and you can feed that into some really powerful AI platforms. And these can create personalized training programs just for you.
Personalized training? That sounds so futuristic.
It's happening now.
Yeah.
And it can optimize your recovery. Companies like Hydro, Normatec, First Beat, they're doing some really cool things. It's about using algorithms to help you reach your full potential.
So tech is clearly changing everything. But let's shift gears a bit, because the sources we've looked at also highlight a shift toward power and explosiveness, not just strength.
Yeah, that's a big one. While building a strong foundation is always important, there's this growing understanding that we need to be able to generate force quickly.
So it's not just about how much you can lift, it's about how fast you can move it.
Exactly. And that's where things like isometric training come in.
Isometrics, that's where you're contracting your muscles without any movement, right? I saw something about different types.
You're right. There are a couple of types. Overcoming isometrics, where you're pushing or pulling against something that won't move.
Like trying to lift a car.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there are yielding isometrics, where you're holding a heavy weight still, resisting gravity. So you might hold a weight at a certain point in a squat, for example.
Interesting. And what are the main benefits of this kind of training? I know there were a few mentioned in the notes.
Well, they're great for building strength. especially at specific joint angles. They help with power development. And they can even help prevent injuries by strengthening your tendons. Jeff Cavalier, he's a big fan, always talking about how it helps build tension in your muscles.
Yeah, I've seen his videos. So if you need to be really powerful at a specific point in a movement, like pushing off in a sprint or locking out a bench press, isometrics can help you target that.
Exactly. That's why they're so popular with athletes in sports that need explosive power at specific angles, like combat sports, where you need to generate force from a fixed stance, or track and field, where the angle you're producing force from is so important.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, another method that caught my eye was French contrast training. It sounds pretty intense.
Oh, it is. It's a really clever way to improve both strength and explosiveness by combining heavy lifting with plyometrics and speed work, all in a very specific sequence. And you don't get much rest between exercises.
No rest. That sounds tough.
It is. So you start with a heavy compound lift, like a back squat at 85% of your 1-rep max. Then you jump straight into a plyometric exercise, like a depth jump. After that, it's a speed strength movement, maybe a speed squat with 50% of your max. And finally, you finish with some assisted or resisted sprints, maybe pulling a sled.
Wow, that's a lot. Why is this rapid-fire sequence so effective?
The magic ingredient is something called post-activation potentiation, or PAP. That heavy lift at the start, it basically wakes up your nervous system.
It primes it.
Yeah, it primes it for action, so your muscles become more excitable, they're ready to fire, and that means you can generate more force in those explosive movements that follow. Studies have shown that this method can lead to big improvements in both strength and jump height.
So you're leveraging your body's natural response to heavy lifting to boost your explosive performance.
That's it.
And who would this be good for? What kind of athletes?
Anyone who needs to jump high, sprint fast, or just be generally explosive. Basketball players, sprinters, anyone who needs that quick burst of power.
Okay, so we can't talk about explosiveness without mentioning actual sprinting. And the sources we looked at really emphasize the importance of incorporating that into training.
Absolutely. And we're not talking about going for a long jog. This is all about short, maximal effort sprints, 10 to 30 meters, all out, and resisted sprints, where you're dragging the sled or something.
Yeah, so what's so great about sprint training?
Well, first of all, it's amazing for developing raw, explosive power in your legs. It really strengthens those glutes and hamstrings, which are so important for all kinds of movements.
And for preventing injuries.
Yes, definitely. Plus, it's also great for metabolic conditioning, improving how efficiently your body uses energy.
Now, one thing I noticed in the material was the difference in body composition between sprinters and those who do more endurance running. It's pretty obvious just by looking.
It is, and the science backs that up.
Yeah.
High-intensity sprint training is really effective for burning fat, sometimes even more so than HIIT or steady-state cardio.
Yeah.
And there's some research that suggests it might even boost testosterone and growth hormone levels.
Which are important for muscle growth and recovery.
Exactly. So you can really see how different types of training lead to different adaptations in the body.
So we've talked about tech and this focus on power, but how does all of this fit into a bigger picture? Because the sources keep talking about this holistic individual approach.
Yeah, and this is a really positive shift. It's recognizing that training isn't just about isolated exercises or hitting certain numbers. It's about the connections between training, recovery, how well you move, and your overall well-being.
It's about the whole package.
Exactly. And this is where concepts like functional bodybuilding come in.
Yeah, I've heard that term. It's often associated with Marcus Filly.
Right. And the idea is that you want to build a strong, aesthetically pleasing physique, but you also prioritize how well you move, your mobility, your functional capacity.
Being able to move well in real life.
Exactly. So it's not just about lifting the heaviest weight possible.
So how does that translate into the actual training? What makes it different from regular bodybuilding?
Well, you'll see more compound movements. Exercises that work multiple joints and muscle groups at the same time.
Like squats and deadlifts.
Yes, exactly. You'll also see more variation in the tempo, lifting weights at different speeds, and lots of unilateral exercises, working one side of the body at a time. And crucially, mobility work is a big part of it. It's built into the training program.
It's not an afterthought.
Nope. The goal is to build a body that not only looks good, but also functions well. A body that's resilient and less prone to injury.
So building strength that carries over into real life.
That's it.
Now, I also saw mention of just movement-based training. Is that similar?
It's very similar, yeah. The focus is on training movement patterns that improve both strength and mobility. So again, it's not about isolating muscles. It's about training your body as one connected system.
Okay. And it seems like all of these approaches are built on the idea of individualized programming, that there's no one-size-fits-all plan.
100%. We all have different bodies, different goals, different lifestyles.
What works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly. So modern strength and conditioning is all about tailoring the program to the individual, taking into account their biomechanics, their training history, their goals.
So it's about being smart, not just working hard.
Exactly. And a big part of training smart is recognizing how important recovery is.
Yeah, it's something that came up again and again in our research. Managing fatigue and prioritizing recovery.
You can't perform at your best or make progress if you're always tired. Recovery is just as important as the training itself. And one of the best ways to improve recovery is through Zone 2 conditioning.
Zone 2, that's the low-intensity, steady-state cardio, right?
That's right. So we're talking about exercising at around 60 to 70% of your max heart rate.
So it seems a bit counterintuitive. If you're focused on strength and power, why do low-intensity cardio?
It's all about improving your body's ability to recover. It improves what's called mitochondrial efficiency.
Which basically means?
It means your cells get better at clearing out all the waste products that build up during intense exercise.
Okay, so it helps you recover faster.
Yeah. It also helps you recover between those really hard training sessions and reduces the overall buildup of fatigue. And you're building a solid aerobic base without pushing yourself to the point of burnout.
So it's like building a foundation that allows you to train harder and recover faster.
Exactly.
Now, it's great to see all these new methods and technologies, but I noticed that there's also this return to basics movement happening.
Oh yeah, that's important. Even with all the new stuff, there's still so much value in those basic compound movements.
Squats, deadlifts, presses.
Those are the staples. They're still the foundation of any good strength and conditioning program.
So it's not about forgetting the old ways, but rather enhancing them with new knowledge and tools.
That's the key.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. Are there any other trends or techniques that we should mention before we wrap things up?
Yeah, there are a few. Blood flow restriction training, or BFR, is getting a lot of attention. It's where you use special cuffs or bands to restrict blood flow to the muscles while you're lifting lighter weights.
Why would you want to do that?
Well, it's been shown to increase muscle growth and boost growth hormone release. So it's a good option for people who are rehabbing injuries or for anyone who wants to build muscle with less stress on their joints.
Interesting. Okay, what about reverse periodization? I saw that mentioned.
So that's a different way of planning your training over time. Traditionally, you start with higher volume and lower intensity, and then gradually increase the intensity and decrease the volume. But with reverse periodization, you start with heavier weights.
You start heavy.
Yeah, and that helps with neuromuscular adaptation early on, so it can be really good for power athletes and for those who are training in shorter blocks.
Okay. And there was also something about neurotraining and cognitive conditioning.
Yeah, that's an exciting area. It's all about improving the connection between your brain and your body. So you might use tools like fit-light systems, which help improve reaction time and decision-making speed, even when you're tired. It's about training your brain to enhance your physical performance.
Wow, that sounds intense.
It is. And lastly, there's integrative mobility work, which is all about combining dynamic mobility exercises with your strength training. So instead of stretching separately, you're working on your flexibility within your workouts. It's about improving your range of motion and how well you move, all in the context of your training.
So we've really taken a deep dive into the world of strength and conditioning. If we had to summarize everything for our listeners, what would you say is the biggest takeaway?
I'd say the most important thing to remember is that strength and conditioning is constantly changing.
It's a dynamic field.
It is, and it's becoming increasingly personalized. It's all about using science and technology to get the most out of your training and your recovery, so you can perform better and stay healthy in the long run.
It definitely feels like we've given everyone a really solid overview of the latest trends and techniques.
I hope so.
So, as you're listening to this, here's something to think about. Which of these methods or philosophies really resonate with you and your goals? Are you all about power? Or is recovery your main focus? Do you want to improve your movement quality? And how can you incorporate some of these new ideas into your training?
Those are great questions to ask yourself.
It's all about finding what works for you.
And remember, this deep dive is just the beginning. If any of these topics have piqued your interest, go out there and do some more research. There's a whole world of information out there.
Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep pushing your limits. Thanks for joining us.